Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Digital Edge podcast. I'm your host, Dominic, flying solo, while my co-host, Francois, is currently exploring the world. And today we have a guest, Fabien Laplace, co-founder, CPO, and COO of Be Impact. Fabien, thank you so much for being here with us on the podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today about digital transformations, but also hopefully different topics. Can't wait to get started and hear all the questions and have a fantastic conversation together.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. As you know, we talk a lot about digital transformation on the Digital Edge podcast, right? And a lot of change in digital transformation is driven by technology, naturally. But there's a huge component in how digital transformation impacts the way we go about doing things, right? There's constant churn, if you will, in how things happen and things to consider beyond the technology itself, right? People that are impacted, figuring out what new ways of doing things and so forth. And before we get into that, maybe tell us a little bit about what Be Impact does.
Of course, absolutely. So Be Impact is, I still like to present us as a social impact startup. I think this encompasses well what we are as a company, but what we do is really we are a learning company. And the way we do learning is that we empower people to learn better and to have better retention. What does that mean? Better retention is actually, rather than just having a training and forgetting about it, we help you remember it with active learning.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So how do we do that? What is active learning and what does it mean? It really comes from this idea that probably a lot of you in the audience today, I've been to university, I've been to school, and you've been to these times where you're revising something with someone, a friend, potentially, and you're explaining, you're teaching each other. And this is the way you learn best. So we're bringing this idea to the corporate sector, and we're making employees of companies become teachers of the thing they're learning to learn better. So this is what we call teaching to learn.
That is fascinating.
And where the social, sorry, Dominic.
Yeah, no, it's very fascinating. I mean, as you said, right? I think a lot of us have experienced that ourselves in our time when you first learn something, when you're exposed to a subject, and once you start becoming familiar and you can start explaining it to somebody else, you not only help somebody else, you also double down on your own understanding of what you think you understand, and you can build upon that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So there's this part of learning because you have to share to someone else, but also learning what you actually don't know very well and what you need to learn better. The last thing I was about to say is a key part of our model, and this is why I started by saying that we're a social impact startup, is that they don't teach anyone. We connect them with nonprofits, social enterprises, and impact startups, so that these people are on the other end of the training, they're receiving the training. So it gives a purpose to these people to become trainers.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So you're talking about organizational learning, basically, right? Do you go into companies and they have like a general learning objective, or is it individual workers that have their own learning plan of how they want to develop professionally?
So we work with companies rather than with individuals, and the reason for that is it's very much the way strategic learning is done in corporates these days. It's really there are these bigger plans, and traditionally we work with specific programs. So it can be about new joiners learning the trade in a certain company or a certain way of doing business. It can be leadership teams developing specific skills around leadership, or it can be things around digital transformation. Obviously, at the moment, AI is a massive topic in every single company we're working with.
Okay, fascinating. Maybe that's now the time to shift in the direction of digital transformation as a whole. You mentioned AI as a hot topic, obviously, right now, where probably most companies are trying to figure out what it means to them, how they can leverage that technology and doing things differently, perhaps. What do you see at companies right now? How do they approach you, or how do they phrase their problem statement, if you will?
It's a very interesting question. And one thing that we see is that there's actually a very wide range of what companies are and their maturity on this question. Everybody's hearing a lot about AI. Everybody's thinking they have to do something about AI, but companies are at very, very different levels. So some bigger companies are very much in the I would say more advanced levels of, okay, how are we going to make these different agents work? How are we going to embed these things in our processes and reinventing our businesses from start to finish? And that means for them, like, what are the new skills that we need to develop in our employees, because work is being completely reinvented, and the skills that were essential yesterday are not anymore today, and vice versa. So there is a segment of companies that are like that, but there are also companies that are much more, actually, they haven't seen so much the impact of AI on their business so far. And they're like, yes, there is this thing, there is this big technology. We see this wave coming. We're not really sure what to do. We might want to invest a bit in software and technology. We might get Copilot for our employees, but we need to help them understand what that is and how to use it, and what are the possibilities. And some of them have also different maturity of understanding what is possible there.
Okay, that sounds like a very typical kind of mix between early adopters and those that already understand it, versus, again, like you said, the ones that are just exploring. Maybe, again, there hasn't been any market pressures from their end about doing something more quickly, but they want to get ahead of the game before they have to be reactive when their hands are tied and they really have to move forward as well. In some of the larger organizations that you're working with, where you maybe have a better defined problem statement, let's call it, right? Do you see variation between parts of the organization that are more advanced in adoption and utilization versus other ones which may be less exposed?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what you can expect of, obviously, the technology IT departments are going to be much more on top of what is going on. But I think even beyond that specific case, I would say it does still come down a lot to individual approaches and individual relationship with technology. And many people have apprehensions. Many people are not going to be your early adopters in whatever product and whatever technology it is. And some people, no matter where they work, are going to be these curious people. And yeah, it's interesting to see that this happens across departments, and even within leadership teams, even within the people who are, C-level, the executives, the people that are buyers, they also reflect this wide range of understanding and capabilities as well.
Yeah, you basically get a natural distribution of levels of interest and capability.
Exactly.
So when a company goes and says, like, hey, we'd like to level up in this case, it's AI, right? How do you go about doing that? Because we've talked in past podcasts also with regards to change, right? Because if you look back in history, we've had like these technological waves, if you will, right? Where all of a sudden, like, everybody jumps on mobile, for example. And so we have to like figure out how to work with that. And then, there's the cloud migration period where everything from on-premise, systems and servers and data center moves into cloud environments. And then there's the data period, if you will, right, where all solutions are driven by data analytics and data science and so forth. Here, now we're on AI. How do you go about, like, influencing or helping organizations that they don't jump from target to target, but perhaps become more adaptive and change oriented as a cultural aspect?
I'm going to quote Jordan Wilson, who is the host of a podcast called Everyday AI that I highly recommend for everyone interested about AI. He basically talked about a 7-step process to change organizations with AI. So yeah, happy to share a bit that. But it really starts by leadership showing by example. So if these people in leadership positions don't have the understanding of what this AI revolution means, how it's going to impact the whole work, future of work, as some people call it, and just every single job, every single business model, it's going to be very hard to make the transformation happen. The second part is really understanding that this transformation, I think, is different by nature compared to the previous ones that you talked about. So one of the differences, obviously, it's much, much, much faster than ever before. And the leverage that some companies, some competitors have is like much, much bigger. So we're hearing more and more this thing of like 10 people, 50 people companies are going to be able to compete with 5,000 or 10,000 employees companies. So this is a big, big shift. So understanding that this is the sort of scale we're looking with means, okay, we need to unlearn and rebuild and relearn how we're going to be doing business in a few years. And we need to do it now because other people are doing it on the side. The following step is really documenting what you know, what you do right, really gathering this data of the human intelligence you have. You have this fantastic asset. You have this company where people know what they're doing, what they're working on, and getting this data to feed it into the AI is going to be key, because a lot of it is just in the heads of your top talents. They might be leaving soon. They might be forgetting.
Or many spreadsheets.
Exactly. Or in many spreadsheets, there's also obviously data that is there. You also need to fix the inefficient processes. Obviously, AI is not going to fix something that is broken. So there's all this part that's kind of like business as usual, and as like really getting it to work properly, because adding technology on top of something that's not working, it's probably not going to solve it. Let's be honest. Then there are parts that are about like choosing the right tools, having the right technology in place. I'm not going to go too deep there. But then there is also understanding that with AI, there's several layers of like training, which is again like beyond upskilling. It's about reinventing our jobs. It's about reinventing how we see our position and our role in collaboration with technology. So obviously you need a basic training, which is about prompting models, how the technology works on a high level, how to make the most of it. And you need to do that, but you also need to understand that it's not a one-off, because it's probably going to be outdated in a few months. So you need to have that kind of consistently. And after that, have a training that is role specific. You cannot just have a rollout a single AI training for everyone and expect that it solves your problem. It's not going to be the same tools that you work with in marketing, technology, HR, and any other in sales. And then it's about understanding how you play with this data that you've gathered, that you have, and create the right procedures to really relearn how to work. Once you've done all of that, once you've understood all of that, these new ways to work, you really need to turn from theory into practice. And this is what we're doing at The Impact, is supporting with that, is supporting with the active learning part of it, which is, okay, we've learned the theory. Now, how can we make sure that we talk about it, that we act on it, that we have like a continuous journey where we do it rather than a one-off. And this is like having clear goals of, okay, we're going to develop a tool that does this and that. We're going to be able to explain this thing to this and that person. We're going to build this culture of using these new tools and new technologies and reinventing how we work. It's really making the shift from I'm an operator, I do my job, to I orchestrate this new technology, and my role has shifted.
Yeah, I think that's a huge shift, and from my experiences, it's very similar, right? In supporting digital transformation for many years as well. I think the hardest part is when the individual is impacted and challenged to do things differently. In the traditional sense, and I think historically, the leader is typically tasked with figuring out organizational design and job descriptions and personnel requirements and so forth. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you're looking more for the empowerment of the individual to be partaking in this change and even contribute to the change of a role and the work, it sounds like.
Yeah, 100%. It is for us, it's about also bringing motivation to people, making them an actor, and saying this is not just a top-down training that your leader has decided that is good for you. This is also something where you are the experts actually, and this is something we've been challenged a lot. Like a lot of people are asking, like, why are you making these people teach each other? They're not trainers, they're not even experts in this. Like, why do you do that? We're like, no. It's about empowering them and saying, like, you can do it. We're gonna help you, of course. Training is like any other things. There are tricks to the trade. There are tips. So we support them in this journey. But you are able to do it. You are able to make an impact on someone else. In our case, nonprofits for a good cause for this. And with this, you can really be a leader in your organization and share these skills, obviously externally first, but also internally and around you, and change this mindset around learning.
Yeah, that's fantastic, right? Because I think it inherently creates ownership and buy-in if you can be part of the process rather than being handed something that somebody top down decided that is good for you, for your role, for your organization, which you may not quite agree with, right? Where you may have a better perspective doing the work effectively every day, right? So I think that's a huge aspect in change management overall, right? To get people involved in the process of change and create that ownership and accountability as early as possible.
Yeah, that makes me think of the other big fear on AI is obviously AI is going to take my job.
Right.
And I'm not going to say the trope of no, someone using AI better is going to take your job. But it is this thing of like the way I see this thing happening is not like within a 5,000 people organization. There might be organization that fire people and do that because they use AI. But most of the time, if they have good employees, they're going to want to retain them and make them do more and do better. This is what you see in so many places. When you have talents, you're like, it's just so hard to get good talents that you want to keep them and make them do other things. So they're not going to lose their job there. They're going to lose their job if they don't do it because a competitor is going to take over and their company is just going to not make as much money as before.
Right. And I think especially in the current sentiment, depending on where you look, a lot of headlines about layoffs driven by AI and so forth. And I think it's not quite valid in the way that is being portrayed. Because if you think of AI, wherever we are today, right, it's not perfect. There's still work to be done, a lot of work, right? We're still in the early stages. But it's really still an enabler or a multiplier for the work a human can do, right? It's like, if you have better tools and you know how to use the tools, then you can do a lot more work, right? And as you mentioned this, and I think your point about a 50-person company being able to compete with a 5,000-person company, right? Traditionally, I think that's more of what we see. So if the 5,000-person company could enable their staff in adopting tools better and make their staff and personnel work better, then all of a sudden they'd compete with a 50,000 person company or better, right? And I think that's kind of a sentiment that I think we need to shift towards versus always, with the fixed mindset of this is all that's possible. I'll keep doing the same work with fewer people. I think we need to look at doing a lot more work with the same people.
Exactly. And this is exactly what's happening. And even on an individual basis, it's like, it's even possible that your company is not going to survive this change because your leadership doesn't make the right choices, because things are moving so fast that who knows what is going to happen. But if you get these skills, every single company on the market is looking for these people who have these new skills and these new ways of thinking. So there is actually a lot of demand for people with these new skills.
Yeah, very, very interesting. As we head towards the conclusion of our podcast episode, again, super interesting. Change management, technology impacting digital transformation, and ultimately the impact to the human, right? Which enables then for businesses to function the best way we can. What would your piece of advice be in relation to AI adoption and digital transformation with AI as we are in 2026 and what lies ahead? To your executive leaders, what would you tell them how to approach this transition?
I think I would start by going back to this thing of seeing the big pictures and seeing it as a massive transformation, reinvention of every single part of the business. It's something that I don't think we've ever seen at that scale and that speed. So it's a very big challenge, but also, as you said, like massive opportunities. You can like 50x what you're doing very quickly if you do it right. The other part is also, at the end of the day, we're talking a lot about technology, but it is humans at the other side of the part. So it is also these human skills that are still very essential. And even if technology is doing the heavy lifting, a lot of it is about how we communicate with each other, how we work together, how we listen. And it means obviously listening to different tools and technology, but how we actively listen. So these skills are also essentials in the way we work with AI, but also with humans. So don't forget that, and don't just bet everything on technology. In my previous jobs, I used to be working in education technology, but more for like primary schools and things like that. And there was this thing of like, for £1 or $1 or €1 that you spend on hardware, you should also spend £1 or $1 on software, and you should also spend £1 or $1 on training. And if you are missing one of the three pieces, something is going to break down the line.
That's a great perspective, and I love the human in the center of change, right? And not just pursuing technology and buying a software license or whatever the case may be, right? But looking at the change in a holistic level to move business forward. Yeah. Very awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Fabien, for spending a little bit of time on the podcast and sharing about the impact, some of the perspectives on digital transformation, change, and learning. I think it all ties very closely together, that organizations can level up, maintain with technological progress, and compete in the marketplace. So very nice work that you do. And again, thank you so much for joining. And
thank you, Dominic. It was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, well, I'll share you can see the information on Fabien's website below, and feel free to reach out to him for further information if you're interested in learning more about what the Impact is up to and how they may be able to help you as well.
Thank you. And also, I'd say last thing, if you know nonprofits who could benefit from our free training, feel free to send us our way. This is really the core of our mission. So yeah, I want to leave you with this one.
All right, very good. Thank you all. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye-bye.